Instead of trying to change the white man in your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, we so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalists. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power families. Brother I.J. Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of our Baba and our ancestor, Brother Malcolm X. We welcome you to Harlem Liberation School online. We look forward to being in a brick and mortar again soon, family, God willing. We are in the midst of our Hip Hop 50 series. Now, you know, we focus on Black political education, our social political movements, our important leaders, important ideas, important political terms, and things of that nature. But we could not miss out on being able to teach our people about hip hop, and it come from kind of a more African-centered, community-centered, grassroots level, so that we're not just hearing from Russell Simmons and Jay-Z and them. Right, the rich industry people. We're hearing it right from the grassroots level. I'm gonna have today we are featured to have a brother that is truly remarkable, in my opinion. Very just remarkable. I'm not even going to get into it, but it's just a remarkable brother. If you read his books or his documentary, or know him and know his background and know the whole journey that he's part of, still becoming. He's still becoming. We're all still becoming, right? But just if you knew his journey, you know just how remarkable the brother is. And this brother is none other who we're about to be calling Dr. Shakur, by the way. Brother Yusef Bunchy Shakur. I'm going to bring our brother in.
What up,
Brother Yusef? How you be, man?
I be good, man.
How you be?
I be good. How about yourself, Black man?
Hey, man. I am blessed to be breathing, Brother Yusef. Now our brother Yusef is headquartered in Detroit, and that's important because we're trying to reach new Africans all over the country. So it's not just you hearing it from IJ in New York. Hip hop has grown past New York and beyond the borders of the United States. So it's important that we reflect that, in the guests that we have. Brother Yusef, first of all, brother, congrats, man. You're making tremendous progress and movement in that doctorate degree, brother.
I appreciate it.
How's that been for you?
It's been a learning journey. I came in not looking to be educated from their perspectives, looking to infiltrate and gain some skills and add some things to the toolbox. So, man, I can't wait for you to read it. Particularly as a chapter around language, about Black language and the challenge that we have in academia, and where like I ran into where they didn't understand the Black vernacular, and I think at the end it ties into hip hop and Black people and how we express ourselves differently, and because of the white dominant culture, they don't necessarily agree how we express ourselves, and as a result, it makes us feel less than who we are, which is a practice of anti-blackness. So through my dissertation, I challenged those social norms. So again, so anybody that's struggling with being an activist, like on like there's different forms of activism, different forms of organizing, and you have to realize that. So for me now, learning that to do it on a grander scale of from an intellectual standpoint, as well as practically still having boots on the ground.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Keeping it relevant, I see. That's very relevant. Not
Yeah.
only to what we're talking about, but just the time we're in today. I think maybe hip hop might be part of the antidote to the ignorance, the misogyny, the division that we see. It might be part of the answer. So all right, brother, let's jump right in. Brother Yusef, for those watching, and a lot more people will watch the recorded version. Um, Tell us your name, city, state, what you do, quote unquote, for a living.
My name is Yusef Bunchy Shakur. I'm son of Ava Joe, born and raised in Black Detroit. I uh, I work at a nonprofit here in the city of Detroit. I'm a deputy director in that. I'm fortunate enough to that's how I take care of myself. But beyond that, I'm also a member of Community Movement Builders. We're a national organization, have chapters in Sacramento, Atlanta, Dallas. I believe we have a new one that's popping up in New York and LA. Also, I'm a member of the Rebuild Collective. We put out a quarterly newsletter propagating New African nationalism. I operate the Mama Cool Community House along with another institution that we're about to present, which is called the Dr. Carl Taylor Research Lab. Both of these community institutions serve to be multi-purpose, community-based institutions that is rooted in the city of Detroit, but more importantly in my neighborhood. So using place-based organizing as a vehicle and means to exercise Black self-determination.
Excellent, excellent. And since we're talking about hip hop, brother Yusef, I want to take you back in memory. What is the first, if you can, the first hip hop song you remember hearing? And do you remember what you were doing at that time and how it made you feel when you heard it?
Wow, that's a deep question. No, I don't remember. I'm 50, so if we're going on the timeline of 73, I'm pretty much on that same timeline. I was I would say I remember, like Run DMC, Curtis Blow, LL, like the songs was coming back to back to back, right? And my original name was Joseph, so I love Run Joseph, so there was a familiarity there. But also some of the last like Fat Boys. I love me some Fat Boys. I love some Skinny Boys. Just the art of storytelling. It was gloom and doom, but however, there was a feeling of hope that storytelling allowed you and propelled you to see beyond your circumstances. Again, many of us who grew up in ghettos and whatnot didn't even realize we was poor or we was in the ghetto. There wasn't something that we took pride in, and at the time, hip hop didn't represent itself in that fashion. So, but it always had been a staple in terms of the soundtrack, as some would say, of my life as it was emerging and coming to be similar to the book Man Child in the Promised Land, becoming a man and through the dynamics in urban America.
Okay. Yes, sir. And you kind of addressed it somewhat from the perspective of some of the national hip hop artists that you respected. But now, what about because you come from Detroit, where they be like, "What up, though?"
Right. Okay.
Right. So, what was some of the local artists? Do you remember any of the local artists that was getting on the mic and the turntables and graffiti when you were coming up?
No, I don't. Fortunate enough for me, I live where I lived at. There was a record store literally right across the street, I'm a bit of a like the thumb on amongst fingers, so I'm an odd like a person. So I remember going across over there, and it was this local underground hip hop album. I helped clean up the store, and like you can pick any album you want. And I picked this one group from Detroit. I mean, for the times they was relevant to me, but in the grand scheme, they didn't necessarily have a lot of staying power. But I do remember an artist called Awesome Dre out of Detroit. He grew up not too far from where I grew up, and what made Awesome Dre's so profound. This was in the midst of the he released his album in the midst of the LL and Kumo D going back and forth, and he inserted himself in that beef by pretty much saying "fuck both of y'all," and on his album on his album cover he has these two individuals. One is supposed to be LL, another one's supposed to be Kumo. They on their knees with a Uzi, like, and it's like it's this like some it's some straight Detroit type shit, but it's hip hop, right? In
Yeah.
the sense of challenging, and that album always had left a mark because again Detroit had not had a prominent artist, so to speak, and he kind of like put Detroit on the map. I mean, I think there were some other folks that was before him, but also Dre propelled us to be center stage.
Now, brother Yusef, this is kind of off the track. You
Mhm.
know how we do. We have kind of just an organic flow. So, a lot of people have watched this series BMF. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
And you've seen some of the episodes, right?
Have not watched one of them. Can't get myself to
But
watch.
you know the story.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, you know the story.
Yes, I am.
Okay, now I was going to ask you, in your opinion, did the series accurately capture the true story? That's what I was going to ask you.
Well,
But
I can ask. I can answer your question in this way. Similar to any urban environment, there's a multitude of drug trafficking, drug cliques, gangs that emerge. So as I'm coming of age, along with hip hop in Detroit, one of the first large drug gangs to come about was called YBI, Young Boys Incorporated. They it's in this little pocket area, so they're not too far from where, or I'm not too far from where they're operating. Some of my older homeboys was affiliates in some form or fashion. Then there was another. These guys were stick up guys. They was called the Best Friends. They became actually national. I mean, these guys was like ruthless. Matter of fact, they remind you of what's that group out of Philly, the Murder Inc. boys. The
oh yeah,
the not the murder.
Black Mafia.
Black Mob. They put you in the mindset of them. Like, and so growing up in there was a couple other folks as well. So in my time period of growing up, and I think Big Meech and his brother, they may be about 5 years older than me. So they're younger, and with the groups that I'm talking about, and the groups I'm talking about are staple. One of the reasons I didn't choose to want to watch the BML because I think trying to make them like, did they start in Detroit? Absolutely, but they wasn't necessarily a major player in Detroit. Once they became prominent outside Detroit and Atlanta, then they was able to kind of come back and do their thing in Detroit. But in terms of like really running things in this undeveloped criminal behavior, there was folks that predated them that had a long bloody history that you got to kind of, and when you look at the pecking order, BMF is still down the road, in my opinion.
Got you. That's why it's important to get it from people indigenous to the community we're talking about.
Mhm.
Okay. Now my queen bee, who's not feeling well. People pray for my queen. She's down under the weather, but she's got some questions. She wants to know, um, do you think that hip hop has impacted you as an activist or community organizer, or even as a scholar? I guess.
Um, I would say it planted the seeds. I mean, I didn't know about the Black Panther Party until I heard Tupac talk one time, right?
Wow.
I mean, officially, and this before his album comes out, and it was just something intriguing about this young kid talking, and he's talking very eloquent and passionately. Obvious, there was Public Enemy. The songs You know what? That one of their greatest album. It takes a nation a million to hold us back. That one line, "My heroes don't appear on no any stamps." Fuck you and John Wayne. But there's nothing in the community to connect those dots. The seeds are being planted, and just show you how we're in the gang activity, selling drugs. And one of my homeboys, we took that album, the saying of that album, we flipped it. Said it takes a nation a million to hold us back. It's going to take a nation to stop us from making millions, just to show you our backwards thinking. However, through an X Clan, this is how I learned about red, black, and green. This is how I learned about Marcus Garvey. But I'm not internalizing it. But the seeds are being planted. So by the time I become an activist through becoming a revolutionary, you go back and you look at those things and connect the dots. So I think in terms of hip hop, and that's one of the reasons I cringe when people call hip hop a culture. I see it as a subculture.
Break that down, brother. What do you mean? Because
Um,
you're gonna have Africa Bambaataa and Kool Herc coming at you now.
please do, please do. I would
I'm
love that.
just joking.
Hey, no, I mean even our own people. I think not only our own people, just on a level. I would state that we're the only group of people in America that's absent of a culture. Black is not a culture. Black is just what it is, black. But you and I also know that it's a political identity. There's a political connotation to it. It intersects with Africanness, Pan Africanism, right? Which produces the type of culture, but as a result of us not embracing us being African people, we have not fully embraced our African culture. So that's what leads to the absence of seeking one. Here comes hip hop. Hip hop is born out of the streets, young folks in trying to make a way out. And so again, let me substitute what you always saying, many of your audience people. Let's substitute the word the streets for oppression. Because that's poverty, hardship, and as a answer to that becomes the turntables, the microphone, etc. That's the subculture that it's coming out of. Them trying to create some, but what we all have the mindset to know, like those things was in us, like the innate of extension of an African culture. It's being shaped by this subculture. Let's talk about culture. What is culture? Culture is everything to a people. It helps them define who they are. If hip hop is a culture, jazz is a culture. If jazz is a culture, R&B is a culture. None of those things those are elements. Those are isolated things of us as a people. A culture is something that we own. It's not for sale. Hip hop is for sale. Some of us would say, well, there's a difference between hip hop and rap. Okay, I'm not going to debate that, but it's still connected to the same body at the end of the day. I don't know if you followed just recently with Special Ed called NWA. That was
Yeah.
And I remember when NWA came on the scene. I remember the song, "Dope Man, Dope Man." And at the same time, you had 2 Live Crew. Hey, we want some pussy. Like those two songs changed the trajectory of hip hop. Like again, we opened up. Hip hop was more colorful. It was more storytelling. When NWA came on, it was a necessary because again, they're being a reflective of a different oppressive environment. And as they said back then, we're the CNN of our neighborhood. We're telling you how it is. But what's missing in this conversation is the capitalist invisible hand, the opportunity to make money. Am I mad at someone's being able to make money? No, I'm not mad at no one being able to make money. What I and others have a challenge is that it's making money off of our misery. It's making money off of our pain. There's too many young brothers in our neighborhood who want to be the next Jay-Z. That aspiration is not a bad thing, but the aspiration is tied to money. The aspiration is not tied to the ability to liberate ourselves. So again, I mean, even our most profound scholars in hip hop, they're not the same. I think the only one who's remained consistent, in my opinion, has been Paris. From his first album to his last album that he put out a couple years ago. And then also, I don't think Paris is one of those guys that just was a rapper about it, right? He there was some substance, and there was some others. So that's my issue with hip hop in terms from a cultural standpoint. And I'll just conclude it on this same thing what we experienced in Detroit with the factories, the Henry Fords and et cetera. It gave birth to the middle class, which was this false buffer class. And I think hip hop has done the same thing. It's created this false buffer class through the means of money. We celebrate Jay-Z because he's a billionaire. But when you look at Marcy and all the things he's done, he's not changed anything. He has no power to be able to really and to connect the dots. Now, if folks brought their resources together, then that's a different conversation. And this is we can talk about Jay-Z, we can talk about Oprah, across the board. And this is has manifested this petty bourgeois class that's tied into the American system that has suffocated us as a means to trying to get out the neighborhood, which we call the hoods, which without changing our political, economic, and social dynamics of building power of trying to liberate us. You on mute, good brother.
I was saying, thank you. I was saying those are very valid points. I'm curious, man. You kind of alluded to how hip hop facilitated, I think, your growth as an activist or feeding you certain information.
Right.
I'm curious to know. I know that as a young man, you were more into the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Did hip hop facilitate your street activity, your angst? When you was ready to set on somebody, did you play hip hop? How did it motivate you, or did hip hop affect you when you were more in the streets? I'm curious to know that.
That's a great question. I'll start here. I remember I was down the street from my auntie house. I was in a dope house doing my thing. It was a guy who owed me some money. It was first of the month. He hadn't paid me, and before I seen him, what song was playing? Summertime by Jeff Prince and
Will Smith, yeah.
That song, right? I'm listening to that song, and then Ghetto Boys come on. What's that most popular song?
Mind Playing Tricks on Me.
Mind Playing Tricks on Me, right?
Yeah.
And I went from just chilling and cooling to winning straight thug gangster mode, and I didn't realize at the time how it pushed it shifted my body, it shifted my thinking. Years later, when I sat back and reflected on that experience, I was like, wow, the music is a very powerful instrumental, and not only just hip hop. Like when you think about R&B, if it weren't for R&B, a lot of us wouldn't be here.
You get that right.
If you get my drift, right? But as a human being, or we want to say like, man, music can't influence me, and I'm more powerful than that. If that's the case, then why when on Saturday mornings we're cleaning up, we're playing certain songs? Why when you on taking this long drive, why play music if it doesn't have an impact on your morality, on your emotions? It does. The problem is that we have not developed ourselves to know how to manage those things that's impacting and influencing us. So I went there to the most extreme, but early on, it did not have an impact on me consciously. One of my favorite albums and favorite artists was KRS-One. When Criminal Minded came out, like that, just like wow. And it wasn't because we know what that album was. It was guns on the cover, whoopity whoop. But I was mesmerized when he said knowledge rules supreme nearly over everyone. Like, I know a lot of people, but they ain't doing a lot for me. I mean, it was little Jews in there, but there was no Yusef Shakur I could go talk to really try to comprehend those things. So it's playing a role, but on the same trajectory, what's common between hip hop, rap, and us as human beings is this oppressive culture that's both shaping us. And it's both shaping us in different ways that sometimes we come together. And I remember when I'm in prison though, when Tupac's his third studio album, third or fourth, Me Against the World comes out. At that time, I'm a full-fledged committed revolutionary. transformed my life. But my son mothers get killed during that period. And one of the guys who kills my son mother, he comes to the prison that I'm at. I still have certain elements. I want to resolve that anger, that hurt. I want to perpetuate on this guy. But that album, that music that Tupac had, the interperspective part when he said my mind couldn't find a rest, so I got Thug Life pattern on my chest. It took me back to a place to your question about being in the streets. So I had not resolved that. I even though I had grown, was transformed, there was no literature at that moment that I read out of our struggle that put me in the face of the younger me. And that Tupac album allowed me to go back and confront the thug life me, the thug me, in which was, he said, the hate that you get little infants fuck everybody. My heart was broken because my mother's heart was broken, because my community was broken. So I became a broken man, and I was trying to break everything that was in front of me because of the pain. And then, but we can't be our best selves until we confront what has destroyed us. And hip hop through Tupac and his music and others have been a vehicle in that means of confronting, learning, and gaining knowledge, even in all its contradictions.
Mm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that, brother Yusef. I'm curious to know, and I think I know your answer, but for those watching, do you think that music artists in general, and that would include hip hop artists, have a responsibility to their listeners? And if so, what is that responsibility?
Absolutely have a responsibility. I think there's a story that Fred Hampton Jr. tells about H. Rap Brown and the influence that he had, and where I think he goes to James Brown and says like, man, you just ain't gonna be, we ain't chucking and jiving around here. We need better music. There's accountability. Like we think that James Brown just woke up and said, I'm gonna make this song, I'm Black and I'm proud. The movement influenced him. There was people behind the scenes having certain conversations. We've seen it also in the remake of that series of conversation between Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, Jim Brown. I can't think of the fourth person. Where Malcolm is challenging Sam Cooke. Man, we need a political song. We need a song that's not just happy. No, this is not happy times. But because our movement is on such a downward sprout that we're looking towards rappers like Killer Mike just said recently in an interview talking about Cop City in Atlanta. He was like, well, since it's $100 million project, there's nothing that we can do. I mean, the odds is always against us, because the odds against it doesn't mean that we can't fight against it. Like, I mean, and those type of statements tells us where folks are really stand. Now, do we is there moments of compromise? Absolutely. There's moments that you got to reconfigure. I'm not saying that. I'm not no all in being absolute and just being a gun ho. No, I'm saying, but principally though, we if we're just throwing in the towel from a principle standpoint, and this is the type of message that we're trying to communicate. This is why we're in the state we're in particular with hip hop artists. Like, many of them have not done the necessary studying, the necessary research to be able to transform themselves. Because more importantly, as you know better than I do, and as you communicate all the time, we just can't be individuals. You have to be committed to an organization. That's part of that. That's part of that accountability. But we scapegoat that, even as Killer Mike said, like, at the end of the day, I'm responsible for taking care of my family as a husband. I commend that. That makes perfect sense. But also, we're in the context of Black people. And if you can't on one hand say I'm 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 advocating for Black people, and then you run behind yourself and say, well, on this day I'm just fighting for my family. It's all the same. And I'm not, again, we have to exercise that decision to not implement that, but we can't use it as a scapegoat. So I think in terms of accountability, it doesn't exist because we as a people have bought into the American system in the sense of it offers us some false idea of upward mobility at the expense of our radical Black Liberation Cells.
Mm. That's that last point you made is something I think about all the time, brother Yusef. The question is a subtext to everything that I do or I see. At what expense?
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost here? How does this set us back or push us forward? And I think if we ask that question more often, it would be helpful to our organizations, our activists, and even the brothers in the street. Like, to what degree you're chasing this, but what's the cost? It's not just what you're getting, it's what you're giving up. And that's a question I think we need to always think about. Um,
Yes.
Now, I guess then from where you sit, brother Yusef, what has hip hop's impact been? And this is now, to be fair to the genre, from both directions. It's positive impact, it's undesirable impact. How would you summarize that?
I think at the end of the day, staying in the middle ground of how you just laid it out, it has given us a voice, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't think a voice is necessary. It's created material, similar to like a book that we all love, to go back and listen. Some of our favorite artists, particularly mine, Tupac. He exemplifies both sides, but I think at the end of the day, if you go back and you listen to Tupac, his catalog, you're going to come out more likely on the other side. You'll find the jewels. The fact that the name of his group is the Outlaws, and the members of his group took on the names of the enemies of America. Right? If you just start there and begin to discover and research, that can put you on a trajectory. Like, wow. So I think that being that voice is what we miss more than anything, and I think that voice has been the most impactful thing. When you look at our history, Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, and that voice has been our battle cry of what's going on and how do we get somewhere. And so I think what we have to do is how do we figure out how to harness our voice, and hip hop has given us opportunity to look at like the importance of having a voice.
Okay. And on the negative side of things, what would you say?
Oh, from negative side, capitalism. Yeah, capitalism. Just a rugged individualism. I think hip hop more than anything has legitimized the N word as a normalizing it, because it's crazy because that's the only word in the Black community that you can start off in the beginning of a conversation. That's my homie. That's affection. You have affection with that person, and you can easily transition into I hate this person.
Right.
I want to kill him. And I'll just be more explicit. Like, what up, my nigga? You good today, my nigga? We gonna hang out, my nigga? And then later in the same, fuck you, nigga. Why you looking at me like that, nigga? Where my money, nigga? I mean, this is the dichotomy of that word that has been legitimized through hip hop, which represents the dichotomy of us as a people and the confusion that still exists in us that works as an anchors of holding us down. I think that's also that's like my opposition of being a culture. Like if hip hop is a culture, then that has legitimized the N word. If hip hop is a culture, then it has legitimized seeing our seeing Black women as bitches, hoes, and hoochie mamas. Who can never be wives and women unless they first have to go through this run of the mill of degrading themselves.
Now, we're going to lighten the conversation up a little bit. I want to thank those of you watching. Certainly want to thank in advance those of you who will watch the recorded version of it. I think I want to go now to this direction. Give me 1 second. And that is, okay, so I've told a story before, Yusef, but I was teaching in a school in Brooklyn, and it was an orientation. The students weren't there yet. We're getting ready for school. And every teacher in there is like slow. We're dragging. We're not responsive. We're not participatory. The principal notices this. Said, hey, what's going on with you guys? Come on, we gotta get ready for the students. Need you to drink some coffee, do whatever. What's going on? What's the problem here? So a sister raises her hand and says, no, I'm not gonna lie. I was up all night watching Versus Dipset against the Locks. Right?
Okay.
But look, Yusef, the funny thing is all of us said, yo, me too. All of us were up watching the Versus with Dipset against the Locks.
Right,
And most people were cheering for the Locks. I thought that was funny, but I thought it was also, it shows how powerful the genre is because there's teachers there of different ages, different politics, you know what I'm saying? So it just let me know, wow, man, hip hop really is impacting a lot of people. All these different people were there to witness this event that they somehow feel connected to.
right.
Do you have any funny or interesting stories that involve hip hop? Funny or interesting that you remember?
I mean, I was standing in alignment of the story you told. When I was in prison, everybody knew I was a huge Tupac fan. And when September 13th, 1996 happened, which was the day that Tupac passed, we had commandeered the card room. And again, if anybody know anything about prisons, the card rooms are where it go down. The guys in there gambling, watching TV, mindless type of stuff. And so a group of us, and I say group, I mean, I'm talking about Muslim, Christians, old, young, every dynamic of Black life was in this room. I mean, and other ethnic groups, and we just listened to Tupac. And son was crying, just thinking about his impact and on us, his potential. I mean, he was that our Malcolm X of our generation, and I use that term loosely because we know he wasn't Malcolm X, but the potential and for that moment it showed us. Because again, I mean, and most of us don't even, and who came in that room didn't interact with each other, but here was this piece that was born out of hip hop, that was part of hip hop, that brought us all together and just congregated in our solitude of our pain and hurt of losing it.
It's funny you mention that because that brings up another story I have. My first year teaching, my first school, 1997. Wild school, gang infested school. And somebody must have asked me about Tupac. Now I'm what you would call, especially back then, a purist. A hip hop. If it don't have flow, if it's choppy, it's whack. Okay. I don't care what they talking about. Gotta be smooth. If it's not smooth, it's garbage. So when they asked me about Tupac, why did I say, man, he's whack? I don't know. He's overrated. Man, listen, Yusef, this is 8th grade, right?
You almost had
the whole 8th grade. This is a wild class, brother. The whole 8th grade class got quiet. And one dude was like, Mr. T, man, why you say that? Why you say that? You told us to be respectful in our speech and then to talk about what we know about and not to talk about something we don't know about. What you know about Tupac? What do you listen to? They got offended, brother. This was, they took it personal. Like they wanted to see me after school type.
It was about to go down.
So I tried to defend myself. And he's like, nah, man, you told us don't speak on something that you don't know about. You told us that was ignorant. Right. And I had to be like, yeah, I did say that. So I did say that. So one of the kids has a Tupac CD in his bag. He's like, yo, Mr. T, take a listen, man. And I hope you come back with a better answer, man, because that was whack. Right? And I mean, they were like, they wanted to see me after school.
Right.
So look, to their credit, I did go home. I did listen to it. And though I still wasn't the best fan of his flow, I did appreciate what he was kicking.
Right.
And the fact that they loved him so much, and he's kicking a little bit of that street, a little bit of that game for the women, a little bit of the gambling, a little bit of the revolutionary. I was like, if they're going to listen to somebody, he's not a bad brother for them to listen to in 8th grade.
Right.
So I thought that's a funny because they were. I mean, when they got it was like a movie scene. It was like, no, he didn't say that.
Wow.
You know, it's funny, man. Hip hop, man. All right, let us move on. I'm curious to know, brother, if you were to think back over your life, and you've had a very interesting trajectory, brother Yusuf. Um, how would you say hip hop has helped you personally? Now, taking it away from the just the outward external political, how's it helped you as an individual,
I mean, like
or
I said,
has it?
like I said earlier, I'm just like everybody else. When I'm cleaning up, I listen to music. I'm playing hip hop, and when I'm driving, I don't listen to the radio. I have satellite. If I do, I choose to listen to jazz. Um, and so you'll hear Cormaker, you'll hear Tupac, you hear some Dead Prayers, you'll hear some Ice Cube. Like, but I'm and what how my it's set up. I selected songs, like songs from certain time period, because that's the down thing about hip hop as well. In terms from an artist, how they start off is not maybe how they finish, and somehow how they finish. It all depends, right? So you're able to put songs, but when I'm writing or trying to get in the mood to write, I'm listening to hip hop. I'm listening to I need certain songs. When I'm exercising, working out, I'm listening to hip hop. So hip hop is part of who I am. Like I said, despite whatever the contradiction is, because we're all a walking contradiction. It's just depending on what degree, a level that you want to be honest with yourself, what that contradiction is. Going back to your point around the locks, right? I'm not a huge fan of locks. However, I love that contribution. I love that energy, and I think that night, if anybody ever want to know what hip hop was, the locks, particularly exhibited through Jadakiss, we saw that night what hip hop was. And also what I talk about and this is the interesting thing, and I don't know how many people really talk about this in particular in New York. Like, so we know like the locks is from where they from? They're not
They
Yonkers.
from Yonkers.
They from Yonkers, right? Yonkers is
Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, because you from New York. It's not on the same level as a Harlem, a Bronx, a
Right.
Queens.
It's more like a quote unquote kind of a outskirt of Bronx, almost like a suburb of the Bronx, with Yonkers and Mount Vernon. So some people in New York don't see it as you're not really New York like
Right.
that. Yeah.
That's my point. But here was this guy from everything that you just described exhibited what hip hop is. And then you think about if Jadakiss was from Queens, he would be on. We would consider him like Nas. If Jadakiss was
Mhm.
from Brooklyn, we would consider him like Biggie. Because of the association of the geographical areas have propelled these guys as well. And so I think when we look at hip hop and internalize it from that level, it also reflects how we deal with each other. Because again, if a certain guy is from a certain area, you're gonna look at him strange eyes, or you're gonna like, okay, that's my man, based upon what you know about that area and how that
Mhm.
area has been introduced to you. So hip hop is a vehicle of how we learn about each other as well, and how we want to relate to each other too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there's a lot of talk about the violence and that's inherent in some hip hop and the violent mood it sets. Some people have tried to use the argument. Prosecutors have tried to say that hip hop has influenced people to do violent things, whatever. Do you think that? I mean, I think we all agree that there's a lot of violence in some aspects of hip hop, but do you think that because of that it should be censored or banned? Going back to that age-old First Amendment conversation, what do you think?
Absolutely not. Hip hop didn't give birth to violence. America gave birth to violence. I repeat, hip hop didn't give birth to violence. America gave birth to violence. So we can't address the symptom without addressing the root cause. The root cause is America, is white hegemony, it's capitalism. We just see it. We see the bastard version of capitalism. We see the bastard version of this violence, because in this violence that we're hearing through the music, we're hearing the physical violence in the physical form, but we're not looking and thinking about the economic violence, the political violence that has perpetuated this physical violence, but also through the means of, yes, because we don't have the type of power we think we have in the society. the way that they're dressing hip hop and trying to put a stranglehold on is I would say it's the same thing they did with Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know what we call Black Wall Street, and the ability to come and just smash it, the ability to come in and just change the rule. I mean, same. You know, no one talks about the violence in rock and roll. No one talks about the violence in country music, and it's definitely there. No one talks about when country music artists are beefing with each other, and there's numerous rock and roll artists that have beef with each other. But this is how anti-blackness functions in this society. Anything that we do and we curate and we do well at, they tear it down, and then they blame us for it to
And
make
then
it up.
steal it.
Absolutely. They feel like a motherfucker. I mean, I share this. Like I remember again listening to Pandora one day, and my music is just rotating, and one of my favorite songs came on, "No Vaseline" by Ice Cube. And that line when he says, you let a white Jew break up my crew," it got bleeped out. The Jew word got, but then the next line after that is like something about nigga something that doesn't get bleeped out. It shows you who has power and who doesn't have power, who controls what. Because again, this ties it back to culture. If our culture is what it's supposed to be and reaffirming life, then that word would have been bleeped out too. It's the same way it was bleeped out for them.
That's right. Good points. That kind of pivots me to a question. And you hear young people and older people, man, this is probably going to be at Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas dinners and Kwanzaa celebrations. This idea that there's a difference between hip hop, say, of the 80s, 90s, and hip hop today, right? Do you agree, first of all, that there's major differences thematically or however you want to look at it, production wise? And if so, what are they as you see it?
Oh man, I think that's a whole show by itself.
You got that right.
Obviously, there's differences. I think when I listen to the KRS One Criminal Minded album and how he denotes the point of being a king. Like when you rap for the king, you're fooling yourself. Like KRS One could have easily donned himself the king of New York. But there was something in him or had been cultivated in him. I want to be a teacher. I don't want to be the king. You see the transitioning from the 80s to the 90s, the dominance of guys want to be the king, the ruler. And when you have one ruler, it creates chaos. And that's what we saw in the 90s. We got a lot of phenomenal music, but within the framework of this chaos. Because again, if you go back in the 80s, I'm not saying there wasn't chaos. It was. I'm not saying that the guys didn't get along. There was. But there still was some level of harmony. There still was some level of the ability to go behind the scenes. But also the harsh conditions that we saw in the 80s or coming out the 70s, going to the 80s was different than harsh conditions of the 80s going into the 90s. Because crack cocaine, what crack cocaine did to black communities in the 80s going in the 90s is totally different than what heroin did to us going from the 70s going into the 80s. And that's reflected in the music.
Yes, sir. That's right. Now, have you ever used hip hop? Because I've used hip hop as a teacher. Mm-hmm. Have you ever used hip hop as a teacher, activist, community organizer in any of the work you do for the community?
Oh, absolutely. When I was in prison, and again making that transition, because again, let me say this: like I believe every revolutionary is an activist, organizer, and advocate, but not every advocate, organizer, and activist is a revolutionary. And so, one of the things that you try to do is how do you reach people? And so, through Tupac, using her as a tool, depending on what song guys like, would taught me how to engage them, and just in general. And I think that is the art form is political. We just have to make it more political for the means of what we're trying to achieve with our people.
Thank you for that, my brother. Now, as we wind down, come to a close, we're going to get a little bit more interactive. as we come to a close, I'm hoping that you could think of your favorite hip hop lyric, Brother Yusef, and spit it for us.
Oh man. I mean, Tupac, one kind of mine. Lord knows, I smoke a blunt to take the pain out. If I wasn't high, I'd probably try to blow my brains out.
Mm.
I smoke a blunt to take the pain out. If I wasn't high, I try to blow my brains out. Some people just get stuck on like that's a suicide note. It might be, but what's contributing to like I don't feel value in my life. I need to intoxicate myself to relieve myself of the pain. This what pain is done. It's so paralyzing. But where's the pain coming from? You and I know the pain is coming from our oppression. But we don't have the courage or the strength or the valor to look at it in that manner. So this is to your point as a tool. So it keeps us in a suspense of undevelopedness. So that whole album there, and there's other songs and lyrics, but that one there, like, ooh, because it helps you. It helps that again. We look at that difference. That from the '90s on up. I mean, like your era, it's always been gang banging, but it's different. It's different levels to it. And what we seen now is a whole nother animal, a whole nother beast.
That's right. I mean, because I was thinking about in Philly, there's a brother, was it Schoolie D? PSK. People always say, "What the hell does that mean?" That's the Parkside Killers. That was a gang.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. There's always been that. And matter of fact, many of the early hip hop pioneers were in gangs, right? So Africa Bambaataa, who started Zulu Nation, was a warlord for the Black Spades, right? So yeah, that's right and exact. Now, brother, we're gonna put you to the test, brother Yusef. We know you're doing dissertations, brother.
Okay.
All right. So we know you're gonna knock this out the park. Give us your top 7 MCs, living or dead, brother.
Man, that's Tupac, Scarface, Ice Cube, Rakim, Public Enemy, Ice-T, and Big Daddy Kane.
There it is. That's a powerful. If that was like your all-star lineup, that would be a hard team to beat. That's for sure. You got freestylers, you got conscious rap, you got some thugged out rap. Yeah, that's hard to beat right there. And also, Yusef, how can people? First of all, I know you're doing. What are your goals after you finish your doctorate work? What are your goals? You want to be a professor?
That's one goal. I'm just see what opportunities that present. Me personally, I'll finally get back to writing some more books. I'm going to turn my dissertation to a book. I'll be having a documentary that's coming out the end of this year, top of next year. Maybe seeing trying to relocate. Just see what's out there, man. For a good brother.
That's what's up. Well, you get the documentary, man, coming out. Let me know so we can help you promote it.
I sure will. I appreciate it, man.
Definitely. Now, do you want people to find? Is there a place you want people to go and follow and support you on the internet?
Yeah, they look me up at Yusef Bunchy Shakur on Instagram or Facebook. Those are the 2 social media platforms. And if you want to learn more about me, if this is your first time hearing me, go to www.ybs8.net. www.ybs8.net. That's my personal website. You just Google my name. I think there's some good authentic things that's out there. If you want to reach out to me directly, when you Google my name, my number, email will come up in some through the research. I'm not a hard brother to catch up with. If you hit me up on Facebook, I manage my own messenger, so I'm always trying to stay connected with people, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's right. And I guess that's with all our critiques of the internet and social media, and God knows I got a million of them. One of the beautiful things is being able to stay connected. That's a beautiful thing. Brother Yusef, man, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for making some time for us, talk about hip hop, and bringing a very good balance of intellectual, grassroots sort of a vibe to the conversation. Definitely appreciate that, my brother. And keep us posted on what you're doing and how we can help you, as you move, how you move. All right, my brother?
I sure will, and I appreciate you, black man.
And you know it, brothers. The feeling's mutual, man. So listen, man, you have a blessed day.
You as
Peace
well.
and black power to you.
Peace.
Yes, sir. Thank you, family, for listening. You know how we do at Harlem Liberation School. We bring you some of our best and brightest, and not always best and brightest in a white man's definition. Who's best for us? Who's the brightest for us? Who helps us better navigate this system? Helps us solve our problems? Helps us make sense of some craziness? Defends us? Helps us want to defend ourselves? That's our best and brightest. And everything we look at has to be through the lens of how it impacts our community. And that's what we try to bring you, those type of people. Yusef Bunchy Shakur is definitely one of them. And he's a very modest person. He always cringes every time I bring it up. But since he's now left the studio, I want you to know that brother that you just heard there started out his life gangbanging family in Detroit. Gangbanging hard, created his own gang in Detroit. And didn't have a close relationship with his father, right? So he's gangbanging, he gets caught, whatever he does, goes to prison. I think he does about 7, 8, 9 years, whatever. When he goes to prison, who's he meet? Who's he reunite with? His father. Now, first of all, just think of how deep that is, that you and your father become estranged. And where do you meet him again? In prison. That says a lot about this country. But his father is now a hardcore revolutionary, right? So when he comes to prison and his father, they get reconnected. His father, of course, gives him books, feeds him, puts him in touch with all his comrades in the prison. Yusef studies, does his due diligence, comes out. When he's done with his sentence, he comes out and hits the ground running and has never looked back. One of the things I most admire about Brother Malcolm was that for all the stuff that he did, he did we don't know about, he never turned back. And that is to be appreciated. So definitely love, black love and respect to Brother Yusef Bunchy Shakur as he finishes up his dissertation and his doctorate work. I am pleased to know that we'll have another Africana studies type of scholar who's not just going to be stuck up in using big words and writing books, but is going to be in our community, help giving direction to people who need it and giving inspiration to people who need it. With that said, family, please stay in touch. We're going to have regular commercials and things coming on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and obviously here on our YouTube channel. We have our Hip Hop 50 series going on and our regular clientele of Africans, new Africans that will be coming aboard. I'm going to highly suggest before I leave, check out our last video that talks about why is France in Niger. Very important video. With that said, family, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Love on your people. Peace and black power. Thanks for supporting. Please subscribe. Thank you.